take you on a bit of a journey today. Maybe share a little bit of my journey, why I love to care for creation, how I got there. And yeah, to start off with, I love stories. And so I'm gonna actually, let's see how this works. Okay, ooh, turning on always helps. Or not. Ah, yeah. Okay, I would love to start with reading a story to you, a story that all of us, I think, know quite well, but with a little twist. So it starts, there was a man who had 2 sons. There was a God who over thousands and millions of years made a great creation with a whole host of creatures upon the earth. And there came a time when one of these creatures came to understand themselves to be special in the eyes of God. And the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the inheritance that is due to me." And he divided his living between them. And the humans said to God, "Give us our inheritance." And they plundered the earth with mines and drills and rigs, sucking out the black treasure, consuming it in the machines and spewing the gas into the sky. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and went on a journey to a far country, and there he squandered his inheritance in loose living. A great economic system arose, fueled by deep-level passions, based on conspicuous consumption and using the black treasure. The people traveled everywhere and nowhere. Forests were destroyed. It was party time. The air was filled with laughter, but the clouds were gathering. And when it had all gone, a great famine arose in the land, and he began to be in want. So he went and joined himself to one of the citizens of the country, who sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. And he would have gladly eaten from the pigs, but no one gave him anything. It was climate change, you know. They hadn't thought of that. And once they had, it was too late. The animals and plants began to just disappear. The desert spread, the wells grew deeper. Water, anxious people, angry people, violent people. The rich built castles, the poor made battering rams. And when he realized, he said, "Why even my father's hired servants have bread enough to spare, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father and say, 'Father, I have done wrong against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.'" And a few began to dream of a home. They saw a vision of God surrounded by the creatures of the earth. They dreamt of living at peace with God and creation, and they set out to make the vision real. And he rose and set out to his father, and when he was far off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and embraced him. I would like to spend a little bit of time to unpack this story and invite all of us to start finding our dream of living differently, our dream of living closer to God, closer to creation, and in more loving ways. And so I'd love to go back to the first reading that we heard this morning, because I really, really love Genesis 1. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's like an artist. Imagine having Picasso tell you the story of his masterpiece. Like every single day, God shares about what he made, and at the end of the day, he says, "It is good." And so he starts with getting, making the planet, day, night, lights in the sky in the night and in the sun for the day, creating water and land, creating creatures of the air, creatures of the sea. And every day he looks at it because the piece of art is a bit further, isn't it? And so he says, "Yeah, it is good. It looks good." And then there is day 6. And then God says, there's something missing still here. Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was the evening, and so the masterpiece is done, isn't it? It's very good. And I think sometimes we have used exactly that to do quite bad things, because it says, he made us to subdue it, to rule over it. But I like looking at it quite closely, and if you look at it, it says, first, he made us in his image, and then he gave it for us to rule over it. And so I was thinking, there must be something in there. And if we are made in God's image, surely we are called to rule the way he would rule, right? And how does God rule? How does he subdue? He does it with love. He does it in a servant way. He sent his own son to die for us. And so surely if we are called to rule, we are called to rule like he rules, right? We are called to learn what it means to rule. And I think that's caring for it. Like in Genesis 2, verse 15, it says, "The Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it." I think that's really beautiful. And I also sometimes love to imagine to be there in the garden with him and Adam and Eve. So he didn't just say, "Okay, now over to you guys, I'm out of here." But he actually spent time with them. On the seventh day, he was hanging out with them. And at that time, they didn't talk about the traffic or the bad weather, because the weather wasn't that bad yet. And so they were probably looking around like, "Oh, wow, did you see that flower over there? Oh, it's stunning. And look at the insect." And he asked them to name the animals. And I think that's God trying to teach us to love it, because if you try to name something, you will get to know it. You will get to know the characteristics of it. And so I think that was really God actually taking Adam and Eve on a journey to actually teach them how to care for creation. And then again and again, we messed up, right? And so, oh dear, out of the garden. But then he tried again, and he gave them rules of how to let the land rest, for example, or how to harvest in a way that also the widow and the poor and wildlife can have food. And so again and again, God was actually teaching us what it means to care for it. So God created this really beautiful space, and he really, really absolutely loves it, right? And he created us to take care of it. It's like, we like to think of us as special, and I think in some ways we probably are special to him. But I think with this special ability, or this special task that he gave us, comes really great responsibility as well, doesn't it? And so, and I think we didn't do too well, because that doesn't look like the perfect creation that he created, does it? And he created everything to work together in perfect harmony. Scientists are still finding species that they have never seen before, and they are still finding connections of how everything is created to work together really well. And if one of them suffers, if one of them is missing, it has a ripple-on effect, doesn't it? But sadly, what we have done with our greed, with our broken hearts, with our sin, has created spaces that don't talk of the beauty of the love that God actually put into the planet. And I think for me, this really hit home after I spent quite a lot of time actually working in places like that. And suddenly, we see pictures like this all the time, I think. We see people trying to raise money to actually help people with missions, which is amazing work. But sometimes when you keep seeing images like this, you kind of become a little bit immune to it. But after working there, for me, those children, they were my little sisters and brothers. I knew them. I knew them by name. And suddenly I was like, wow, what I am doing in my country, I've got the privilege I can come back and live in a country that is doing pretty well. but they don't have that option. They can't find food. Those guys that live in those huts, when they look out of their window, they don't hear beautiful bird song, but that rubbish is not all theirs. And so this really took me on a journey, and I started to question, okay, what can I do? And so I always started to ask God, okay, break your heart for what breaks mine was one. And then the other thought that I had was, there must be more than this. It's great to work with missions. It's great to feed 500 children every day. But surely we can do more than that. We can do something that has a longer term impact. Because if you feed them every day, they will come back every day because they still won't have food. And so it just started me thinking. And so I was thinking, okay, but how can we find our way back into the garden? What can motivate us humans to actually change the way we live? And so the first question was like, maybe if we know enough, like facts and figures, right? Climate change facts. But I don't think that works. It's not a brilliant motivation to actually change our lifestyle because we have known since decades. I learned about it in the 1990s in school. And we are in, 2024? I'm in the right year. So we have known for so many years, and still we live actually worse than when I started studying about it. And so, yes, facts are important. I think we do need to know what we are doing. But it's not really good motivation to make change, lasting change in our lives. And then the second thing that happens quite a lot is maybe we can change with a good scare, if you get really properly scared of what the future brings. But I think a lot of us actually struggle with climate anxiety. I do at times. But I think, again, fear is not the best motivation for change, because fear often, first of all, makes us freeze, because we are so scared we can't do anything anymore. It doesn't actually get us going. Or we just stick the head in the sand and hope it will pass, No, still here. And so I think fear is not a great motivator either. It might motivate us in the moment, but then you get used to the bad weather and it's like, okay, accept it, and we go back to normal life. Or maybe guilt and shame, just a little bit of guilt. I think, again, not a great motivation, because if we hear all the things that are wrong because of the way we live, I think it makes us feel a bit guilty, or it does to me. But guilt kind of makes you look over the shoulder, I do something different. Okay, nobody saw it, it's all right, only this time. And again, we get used to, it's okay, it's only me, only once. And so it doesn't actually create lasting change. And so I started to think, okay, what actually does create change? And I think the problem is in the heart, isn't it? It's greed, it starts in the heart. And so lasting change, I think, also needs to start in the heart. And so I think the only way that we can actually really make a difference is learn to love again. Because if we don't know something, we won't love it. So therefore, we need to go out and get to know nature. And if we don't love something, why would we care? If you've never met My Little Bingo Bob, it's not a nice picture, but believe me, once you start cuddling that little lamb, you actually really care. And so I think we really need to learn to love again. And I know I shouldn't have a favorite Bible verse, because it kind of feels wrong, right? The whole Bible is important. But I do. I have one verse that, for me, really guided me on my journey, the whole time, actually, my journey with God, and also in my journey with caring for nature. And so, I would love to read it again. So the Pharisees, they tried to trick Jesus, like they did many times, because he was just too radical, too different. They didn't know what to do with that, so let's find something where we can get him. And so again, they tried to do that one day, and they went to him and said, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these 2 commandments. I love that. Because actually it doesn't say that any of the 10 commandments are irrelevant, right? Because they are included in all of that, and way more. It's much more than the 10 commandments. But what has that to do with nature? Does it have something to do with it? And so I started looking at it a bit more, and because it was kind of, I asked God quite a long time ago to teach me what love means. That's kind of an endless journey. It's going to continue forever. But step by step, you can learn more. And so once I started realizing, okay, I actually do want to intentionally care for nature, I went back to my favorite verse, and then I thought, okay, loving God. What does it mean to really love God? And I think a few things came to mind. One is, if you really, really love somebody, you start loving what he loves, right? And so if you really love God, you need to find out, what does he love? And he loves all of creation. He loves every single bit of it. And so loving God actually means loving creation. And if you love it, you do need to take care of it. It's that amazing gift that he has given to you. If somebody makes a piece of art for you and gives it to you, you wouldn't just take and say, oh, thank you, next bin. No, you would actually really cherish it. You would put it up in the best place in your house, and you would look at it again and again. And so I think that is one element for me where it connects with nature. But also the other thing is, if an artist makes a piece of art, I don't know, some of you might actually be artists. You might write songs or do paintings. You put all of your heart into it, right? So your piece of art actually speaks of who you are. And I think God did exactly that. He put all of who he is into creation. So if I want to know God more and I want to love him, I go out there and spend time in nature, because I think it really speaks of him to me. I love looking at the tiniest details and like, wow, he actually made that? He cares for that? And he cares for me as well? And so I think loving God kind of puts me on that journey of loving him and all that he has made. And then loving your neighbor as yourself. Who is my neighbor? Is it Susie who lives next door? Is it my family, my church family, my village, my city? Or is also my neighbor the person in Bangladesh who made my clothes? Is my neighbor the one who grew the vegetables that I am eating? Is my neighbor those kids that are really struggling with getting food because climate change has actually destroyed the space that they live in because of my actions? Or is my neighbor my little niece who is 2 years old, and her kids and her grandkids, the next 7 generations that depend on this planet to live on? So if I want to love my neighbor, I actually do need to live in a way that they can still live on this planet. And so it's like, whoa, it started like mind-blowing, like, wow, what does that all mean? But then also loving myself. Does loving myself mean I can just do whatever I want? Because I want to eat whatever I want right now. I want to travel wherever I want, however I want. I want everything instant. Or does loving myself mean living in a way that is actually good for my body, that is actually good for the body that God has given me? So eating food that is not stuffed with antibiotics or pesticides or chemicals. Or maybe walking instead of driving once in a while. Exercise is kind of good for us. Or car sharing. Suddenly you sit in a car with friends, you get to chat, you get to socialize. It's good for our soul, isn't it? And so I think loving ourselves is also learning to live in a way that is actually good for the planet, because soon I found out that what is good for me is good for the earth and the other way around. It's so connected that actually it's good for me. It's not about giving up a million things. It's about this love adventure, this journey of learning to live differently, so it's better. It's life-giving for the earth, but also life-giving for us. And when I started thinking about it, I was like, this is a bit overwhelming, isn't it? Because you could go into every single detail. It's about clothes, it's about how I spend my time, where do I start? And so I started, and I have a little bit of a formula that I use, if you like. And so I call it a love revolution. It's plotting with God for people and nature. And so all those letters stand for something, because it's easier for me to remember. So the P is the beginning of the journey, which stands for pray. I think it's always good to start with prayer, right? What I love to do is go for a walk with God out in nature and just ask him, show me what you see. What is this? What would you like me to do? And just really spend time with him. Spend time with him in nature. Enjoy nature for what it is, the gift that he has made it. And just really immerse myself, partly alone, partly with my friends, with people that I want to journey with. But the starting point for me is prayer. And then the next part is lifestyle. So looking at my own lifestyle. Now, this is not about judging and feeling guilty about the things that I do. This is literally just spending some time observing, like maybe making a creative diary of a week. What do I do with my time? What do I do every single day? What are my routines? Where do I invest my time? Where do I invest my resources, my money? What do I do from when I wake up until I go to bed? Where do I shop? Just writing down, just observing, so I actually know what I'm dealing with. And then I take this diary and think, okay, I want to change one thing. So the next point is owning it. Like, it's my responsibility to make a different step. I don't need to wait for the government. It's not going to come. I don't need to blame somebody else, because China is way worse than us. So. Or it's about me taking ownership for my own actions and starting this journey of doing things differently. In my life, for example, because I was living at a Spannend place, beautiful countryside, loads of grounds, and I always thought, okay, everybody likes food, right? Everybody likes free food. And I love to learn how to do things. I like practical things. And so they allowed me to use 120 square meters of land to grow my own food. And so I thought, I'm going to learn how to do this, because I know that my grandparents and my parents, they used to do it. When I was a kid, we used to do that. And so I started with 1 square meter. I thought, okay, what are the idiot-proof vegetables I can just stick in the ground? It's going to work. We are going to eat something. Even if it's not much, I'm going to pull out this carrot, and that's going to be my first carrot that I have grown. And so I started this journey. Obviously, not everybody can do this, because not everybody has land. But my starting point was that. And then I started inviting friends. And then I started studying permaculture. And I was like, there's such a thing as food forests. What is that? And then COVID came and everything shut down. And so we had people and time and land. I was like, party time. And so we started planting a food forest. And so my journey was the journey of food. But I think everybody has a different journey, right? Some people, if you live in a city, maybe transport is a bit easier for you to change. I was in the middle of nowhere, so getting rid of my car would have been a very long walk to the shops. But I can car share, but I couldn't actually just use transport because there was no public transport to where I lived. But somebody else, maybe they can start using public transport or walking more. And so we all have elements that are easier for us to do, right? And so for me, it was about learning and then also celebrating what worked. And I also find if I do something because I really love to learn, then if it doesn't work, it's okay, I can try again. Love is forgiving, isn't it? And also, you do it and you share about it because you love it. Therefore, it doesn't involve guilt. It doesn't involve shaming. You share it because you want to share the good things that you experienced, the good things that you learned, and also you want to learn from others, don't you? And so the next one is talk. Didn't really like the word because, I would prefer share or listen, but plol or plosh didn't sound so good. And so, let's plosh for nature. So I went for talking, but it stands for sharing with people, sharing with friends, sharing the journey, doing a meal together and learning from each other. So first of all, you don't do it on your own, because alone, I think a journey can be quite lonely, and you feel like, oh, that's not making any sort of impact. But if you actually do it with friends and you learn from each other and encourage each other to keep going, this journey really becomes a journey that is really exciting. It's like a new adventure. It's like learning to live in a way that is really good for both people and nature. And I won't keep you too long. Don't know if timing worked well, but what I would just love to leave you with is just, that you also join this journey of dreaming, a dream that is a better home for all, and do it together to see this vision that we talked about in the story of the prodigal son. And so that we together can start this journey. And I would love to invite you onto what I call a love revolution that just changes the way we live together, but also the way we care for the planet, and that we start making life-giving choices instead of choices that are not so life-giving, actually. Thank you.